Hey everyone, it's LS, and this is going to be the patch 9.10 notes rundown. We're just going to get right into it. Yumi is in this patch. I already talked about her in another video. You can actually just find the first impression video elsewhere on the YouTube channel. Overall, I do think that she is the Mew of supports, and so it'll be interesting to see how she performs actually on the patch. Brand. E damage, increased late ratio increased, E conflagration, magic damage, 70 to 150 plus 0.35 ability power scaling to 70 to 170 plus 0.45 ability power scaling. Brand I don't think is actually in a good enough spot to magically become viable, although obviously this damage will definitely help him in the support role. I don't think there's any other position where he can realistically be played at this point in time, though, so while the buff is definitely welcome, I think that it's an extremely subtle buff that will only help in very specific circumstances. Caitlyn, W headshot damage increased, helping Caitlyn out in a way that doesn't affect her already strong wave clear in the late game by focusing on when she successfully maneuvers her traps for maximum damage. W orbital snap trap. Headshot bonus damage 40 to 240 scaling to 60 to 240 scaling. Not the biggest buff in the world, but definitely something that can help her out. I'm actually a little bit surprised that we're not seeing more of Caitlyn yet. I'm assuming that people still want her to have a little bit more love so that she can actually truly be the oppressive ADC that she's designed to be. Because Caitlyn, if she's on even footing with other ADCs, really doesn't feel that good until much later in the game. Fiora, W now blocks Braum and Kennen stuns rather than preventing them from proccing. Okay. Graves, Q damage increased late, Q end of the line damage 85 to 205 scaling to 85 to 225 scaling. So the obvious points that we want to look at here is he gets 5 damage at rank 2, and then he gets 10 damage at rank 3. These are obviously the ones that are going to impact the early game ganks. You can make an argument that maybe this one as well, 15 damage, but everything after that, obviously 20 damage. In the later stages of the game, maybe you'll end up proccing Q twice inside of a late game team fight. It can end up equating to 40 damage, which is quite nice. These Graves buffs are obviously going to be welcomed, but there's other problems going on inside of the jungle right now to the point where this isn't going to magically make Graves come back as a meta champion, but it might definitely bump his solo queue performance, and I do think that it can, remind people that he is indeed a jungler and put him back on the radar. Mastery, Q cast time removed, adjusted target scanning. Ooh. W cast time removed, E no longer grants AD while not on cooldown. R movement speed increased and adjusted. Q after Alpha Strike. No longer 0.1 seconds to cast. If Master Yi is struck fewer than maximum amount of times he can with Alpha Strike and there are no nearby eligible targets, he will now strike the same target for 25% of the damage before checking for nearby targets again. Does that mean that if a target is isolated, they take double damage? Because it keeps checking? So they turned him into Kha'Zix in a way. Almost double damage. That's actually fantastic. I think that is a beautiful change. W meditate. Cast time no longer takes 0.05 seconds to cast. Fantastic. Wuju style no longer grants 10% attack damage while not on cooldown. That doesn't really matter because of the damage steroid that Alpha Strike's going to be getting if the target's actually isolated. W or R Highlander, movement speed 25 to 45%, total movement speed to 35% to 55% bonus movement speed. Wait, is that a nerf? Check out Freak. Check out Freak for that change. Apparently, also, I need to get a new overlay, as the overlay is not actually capturing the entire screen, so a little scuffed right here. Anyway, the change to Alpha Strike, I think, is fantastic. I think that it's... Like, the movement speed from Highlander, I don't think is nearly as big as this Alpha Strike change. The fact that he essentially has isolation now on targets inside of the jungle makes him actually really scary, I guess, to encounter, especially if there's no one else around. That's quite a very big damage steroid for him inside of the jungle. I know that some people were trying to play him about a couple of weeks ago when the itemization changes happened with Wit's End and whatnot, but I'm not sure exactly how this pans out. There's definitely a chance that maybe with the itemization changes and this Q that he is not as much of a jokey champion, because the isolation I think is fantastic for helping his early game and helping his invades out, and he's actually probably scary. Obviously with the meta change not having a cast time and the Alpha Strike not having a cast time, I guess that's fantastic. I don't know if they ever fixed the change where if Yi lost a vision of the target that the Alpha Strike wouldn't cast. Maybe they actually did change that in a previous patch, and I'm just completely blanking on that. But pretty much that's all that I think about Yi. Q cooldown now scales, E cooldown increased. Broken Wings, 13 seconds at all ranks to 12 to 10 seconds. And then Valor, 10 seconds to 6 seconds to 14 seconds to 10 seconds. So this is overall a nerf. Obviously, this makes it so that Riven can't just spam her shield inside of the lane, which ends up meaning that she's going to have less effective HP inside of the laning phase. The Broken Wings now being 10 seconds, I mean, I guess this means that she can Q spam a little bit more, but I think that not having the shield and the dash is definitely going to impact her, and I think this actually affects her CDR more negatively than it does the Q change, even though some people will look at the Q change as if this is massive. I mean, the Q buff's nice for damage, but I think that Riven's slipperiness is definitely heavily impacted by the Valor change and then on her ability to sustain through laning phase. I know that Korea has primarily liked her more so as a jungler, whereas NA and EU, I believe, prefer her as primarily a top laner. And so it'll be interesting to see how this ends up changing things up, because I feel like the Broken Wing change is actually massive for jungle, whereas the E Valor change is actually really big for top lane. So that's pretty cool. And then also there's the crit Riven. So maybe with 40% CDR and whatnot, Q Broken Wings can actually be quite impactful in late game duels. But I would imagine that this would be much better for jungle Riven than top Riven. R Shaco cast adjusted, cool. Soraka, movement speed increased, decays more slowly. Q Star Call, 14 to 30% to 15 to 35%. I don't know why they're buffing her. Rapidly, significantly less rapidly. She's being played in mid in NA, right? Or I'm actually unsure if that is dying out yet or what ended up happening with that. I never ended up seeing mid Soraka inside of Korea, but I mean, these buffs seem very welcome. Tryndamere, E cooldown decreased, AP ratio decreased. Cooldown 12 seconds to 9 seconds to 12 to 8 seconds. Ratio 1 point ability power to 0.8 ability power. So the ability power thing doesn't really matter that much. The 1 second off at max rank is not what's gating Tryndamere from being a competitive champion. Vayne, R tumble cooldown reduction now scales. Final hour, 50% at all ranks to 30, 40, 50. Definitely think this will take away some of her power, especially at level 6, which is obviously the intended goal. Do I think that it'll remove Vayne entirely from the meta? No, not necessarily just by itself. Now let's move on to Xin Zhao. Q cooldown decreased, 3 Talon Strike, 9 to 5 seconds to 7 to 5 seconds. I think this is a fine change. He was obviously hit by Scuttle Crab, and he disappeared from the meta even slightly before the Scuttle Crab change. He wasn't as popular in recent patches as he was when he was dominating the entire Rift with Camille. So I think this kind of a buff is actually completely fine, because overall I do think that jungle is in a really weird state right now, and XP in particular feels really bizarre and bad, especially even more so since the Scuttle Crab change, at least for solo queue jungling. For competitive jungling, I think that everything in that regard actually feels a little bit nicer since the Scuttle Crab change. But obviously Xin Zhao is not really having a lot of prevalence in competitive. I know that people are picking him at MSI, and I joke about it almost every time that he gets picked, so that says enough. Zyra, plants no longer take additional damage from basic attacks that do not trigger on-hit effects, okay? Essence Reaver attack damage increased, 580, nice. Guinsoo's Rage Blade, phantom hit frequency decreased, armor and magic penetration increased and flattened. Phantom hit frequency, every 2 attacks to every 3 attacks. Armor penetration, 6% to 15%. Magic penetration, fat 15% now, every 3 attacks. So this combined with Vayne's other nerf is actually quite a big hit. This is a very, very big hit. I also do wonder what this ends up meaning for Kai'Sa. One thing that I do want to point out, though, is that this probably isn't the end of the world for champions like Kog'Maw and Varus, but this item is definitely really weird, and now I'm assuming that because of the Yi buffs, this is also maybe another reason to change the Guinsoo's Rage Blade up. So now I think that that is obviously really problematic. Another champion that does end up getting hit by this is Neeko. So this just seems like it comes out of completely left field. The phantom hit is mostly why everyone was picking it, not for the armor and magic penetration. I think if they're going to do this, they should probably just end up reverting Guinsoo's. Because this is definitely really strange. You'll have a little bit more oomph in the first couple of hits, So I think that champs like Varus and Kog'Maw definitely can still utilize it, but champions that were mostly utilizing it only for the phantom hit frequency are going to be impacted quite negatively. Hunter's Talisman pets now also apply the burn. Cool. Rune Gecko's combining total cost decreased, letting Rune Gecko users get their jungle enchanted items sooner so they can compete with other types of junglers. This is really good. AP junglers have definitely been lacking lately. This is another beautiful Karthus buff, which makes me extremely happy. It's also a nice buff for Elise. It's a nice buff for Evelynn. I don't actually know of too many other AP junglers that realistically you could consider coming into competitive. But this is pretty nice. Karthus continues getting buffed. Gragas, I guess, AP Gragas gets buffed by this because it means that he can get everything one camp faster. So I think that's all really good. Runes, Conqueror, true damage and healing decreased. We hear you, it's too strong, so we're nerfing it. At full stack, 10% to 8% of the damage. Not the end of the world. Let's scroll down now. It actually seems like that is probably it for the major changes. And so let's recap one last time before getting to the skins. So Yuumi change, already talked about that. Brand, it's still not going to be enough for competitive. Obviously, it's any buff is going to be positive for solo queue, but for competitive and high MMR, it's not enough. Caitlyn, I actually think this buff can definitely be overlooked, but not a lot of people are playing Caitlyn that much. I think that more people want her to have a little bit more power. But with some of the ADs being hit indirectly by the itemization change, maybe Caitlyn gets a little bit more love going forward, especially because MSI is currently locked on 9.8. Fiora, it's just basically a novelty change. Graves, I definitely think that it'll put him back on the radar, and it's going to cause people to start playing him again. Normally, I would call this a placebo buff, but I don't think it's entirely a placebo because the damage can definitely rack up in the mid and late game. So I hesitate to call it a placebo buff. I just don't think that it's enough to bring Graves back into a powerful enough state for competitive. Mastery is one of the most interesting to me because it does make me wonder if he's potentially on the cusp of being viable, if the Alpha Strike essentially acts as an isolation, because Yi, inside of the right team compositions, can actually be a menace if he gets really far ahead, so long as we don't have funneling coming back. Riven's changes, I think, are really good for jungle Riven. And for top lane Riven, I guess if you end up going crit Riven and you can make it to the later stage team fights and whatnot and later stages of the game, I think it's good. But obviously the Valor change will impact her EHP inside of laning phase. Shaco, cool. Soraka, again, I have no opinion or knowledge on mid lane Soraka right now, so I don't know what's going on there. Tryndamere, doesn't really matter. Vayne with her change and the Guinsoo's change, I think that it's going to hurt her a lot more than people are thinking. Xin Zhao, Q cooldown decrease, I think is completely fine, but he's been having other problems inside of competitive. He just disappeared. But I don't think that he needed to disappear as rapidly as he did. I do still think that he's like a B+, A- type jungler. Zyra, nice. Essence Reaver, any buff is going to be welcome. Guinsoo's Rage Blade, I think that it's still going to be fine on Kog'Maw and Varus, but outside of that, it's not going to be the best situation. Rune Gecko change, I think, is completely fantastic for all of the AP junglers, and most notably, Karthus continues to get indirect buffs over the last couple of patches, so we're not actually seeing them all that much at MSI, which is still really surprising, but what that means is that hopefully we just get to see him more for summer, because it's the best jungler in the game. All right, now let's get to the skins. So this is Battle Academy. You know what I'm getting right now? I'm getting a Yu-Gi-Oh! GX vibe. Not sure why I'm getting this, but I'm definitely getting a Yu-Gi-Oh! GX vibe. These are like badges. Now I'm getting a Pokemon vibe too. I feel like I'm at like a Pokemon Battle Tower or something. Oh, you guys can't see it. Oh, this is scuffed. There's the badges. There they are. All right, this is scuffed. Oh yeah, this is Battle Academia Jace. I believe this is the one that the League Partner Program is going to have the Chroma available for. Definitely want to check out some of the League Partner Program content creators, streams, YouTube channels, you know, and whatnot. You know, you can definitely potentially get one of those Chromas. Yeah, Battle Professor Graves. I mean, this actually kind of reminds me of a younger Auron from Final Fantasy X. Not really quite sure why he's holding something, but it doesn't really matter. I'm still getting an Auron vibe. Battle Principal Yuumi. It's not quite Charles, but Yuumi will definitely have to do. Not sure how I feel. This again is giving me a Pokemon vibe. I don't really know, which I guess is maybe it's pretty cool because we just had Detective Pikachu come out. You know. Why? What is Ezreal's problem? That's Ezreal, right? In the background? What is he so excited about? Is she on Tinder? I don't know what she's on her phone. It's fine. All right, so that's it for actually the skins. Not really feeling this line all that much, to be completely honest. It's like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon came together, so it's pretty much, yeah, I'm not feeling it. Not feeling it all that much. We got some chromas. We do have some chromas. Chromas all look actually okay right there. Okay, so we got Eevee. We got Eevee right here. This is really cool. This is actually really cool. I actually like this skin. It reminds me of some character from Soul Calibur, I believe. Oh, wow. Oh, this is a really cool skin. This is actually a really, really nice skin. What is the League Partner one? I think it's the green one. I assume it's the green one. I assume it's the Emerald, right? It's always the green. I'm not, yeah. All right, so that's it for the patch rundown. Hope you guys enjoyed it.